For decades, 37 scattered skeletons were called the victims of a final massacre at Mohenjo-daro. But none were found in the citadel, and the city has no matching destruction layer. This is the mystery beneath Mohenjo-daro's mythical massacre. Mohenjo-daro stood beside the Indus River system in what is now Sindh, Pakistan. During its mature urban phase, roughly 2500 to 1900 BCE, it ranked among the great cities of the ancient world. Its builders laid out brick houses, wells, platforms, streets, and an extensive drainage system. This was not an accidental settlement. It was a planned urban landscape sustained across generations. The ruins entered modern scholarship after excavations began in the 1920s. Archaeologists exposed a fortified citadel area and a sprawling lower town. But they also inherited damaged layers and difficult chronology. Among the streets and buildings, excavators recovered human remains. Some appeared in unsettling positions, and those images would eventually become more famous than the uncertainty surrounding them. A simple story took shape. Invaders entered the city, killed its residents, and left their bodies where they fell. The civilization's end seemed to have a crime scene. The claim sounded persuasive because it connected bodies, abandoned buildings, and the decline of an entire civilization. But those three facts did not necessarily belong to one event. The first warning lies in the number itself. The remains were not uncovered together. They emerged from separate rooms, lanes, debris deposits, a courtyard, and a stairwell across years of excavation. Their positions could not establish that they died on the same day, in the same phase, or for the same reason. A collection assembled by modern researchers is not automatically an ancient group. In room 74 of House 5, excavators recorded 14 skeletons, or skeletal parts. 4 lay above a ruined wall, an awkward position for victims supposedly killed while the house still functioned. Archaeologist Harold Hargreaves interpreted the position as evidence that some remains arrived after abandonment. John Marshall objected that the precise timing could not be determined. Even the original investigators disagreed. One Room 74 record describes an incomplete skeleton above the southern wall. The bones were friable and damaged by salt, and a shell bangle remained nearby. That is not a clean battlefield deposit. It is a damaged body in a disturbed architectural setting, with uncertain timing and preservation severe enough to complicate interpretation. Elsewhere, 3 individuals appeared in thick debris inside a House 3 courtyard. The courtyard had already fallen out of use before the deposit accumulated. 6 more, including a child, came from the VS area, or Lane 4. They were reported in loose or clean earth, not securely arranged across an active street surface. A fragmentary individual found in Deadman's Lane came from later debris and may have rested beneath a later house floor. The dramatic location name could not solve the stratigraphy. The evidence was becoming less like one frozen moment and more like a box of disconnected puzzle pieces. Yet another group would make the apparent pattern even harder to explain. Block 10A produced 9 skeletons, including 5 children. Loose earth slides into an irregular hollow in the reconstructed deposit, revealing why its shape could be mistaken for a deliberately dug grave. Excavator Ernest Mackay called it a burial pit. But that phrase was convenient, not proof. Investigators found no definite pit walls and no clear traces showing that someone had dug it. 2 final skeletons were found on stairs in a well room known as Section G. Their placement was disturbing, but a stairwell is a location, not a cause of death. Illness, isolated violence, abandonment, later intrusion, or unusual mortuary treatment could leave remains in such places. Without secure dates and context, the position alone cannot choose among them. The massacre story gained authority through archaeologist Mortimer Wheeler. In accounts published in 1947 and 1953, he connected the civilization's end to an Aryan invasion and used the Rig Veda as a historical guide. The theory joined three suggestive elements: the city's name, often rendered as Mound of the Dead, strangely placed skeletons, and Vedic imagery of Indra destroying forts. Its conclusion was condensed into three unforgettable words: Indra stands accused. It was a powerful line, but it reversed the proper order of archaeological reasoning. A literary story had become the frame, and ambiguous remains were made to fit inside it. The question was never whether ancient texts contained conflict. It was whether Mohenjo-daro preserved the destruction, weapons, burning, and securely contemporary dead required by this specific invasion story. In 1964, American archaeologist George F. Dales reopened that question. He returned to the excavation reports and separated what had actually been recorded from what later writers had imagined. Dales counted approximately 37 skeletons or parts attributable with some certainty to the Indus period occupation. Even that careful wording matters. The sample was incomplete, scattered, and chronologically uncertain. Then the city plan delivers the sharpest reversal. Location markers rise across the residential lower town, while the fortified citadel remains completely empty of reported massacre victims. Every one of the approximately 37 remains came from the lower town. Not one came from the citadel, the fortified sector where a dramatic final defense would most plausibly leave evidence. Absence alone cannot prove that no violence occurred, but it creates a major problem for a story built around an invading army and a city making its last stand. The expected destruction signature was also missing. Dales found no citywide destruction layer over the latest settlement, no extensive burning, and no assemblage of armed warriors surrounded by weapons. A conquering army might leave broken defenses, concentrated weapons, burned buildings, or bodies sealed in one event layer. Mohenjo-daro's reviewed record did not produce that combination. What it produced was messier, incomplete bodies in separate deposits, some associated with ruined or disused structures, and no secure demonstration that they were contemporaries. That does not turn every individual into a peaceful burial. A localized raid, personal assault, epidemic, accident, or mistreated body remains possible for particular cases. The narrower conclusion is stronger. These remains cannot support a single citywide massacre. The famous ending had been inferred before the individual deaths were understood. Later, mortuary research deepened the chronological problem. Gwen Robbins' Shug emphasized that remains occurred in buildings, lanes, stairwells, and debris instead of one formal cemetery or one secure catastrophe layer. At the time of that review, the collection lacked sufficient accelerator mass spectrometry dating to place every deposit securely within a precise phase. The central clock was still missing. Without those dates, bodies found meters apart could still belong to different episodes of occupation, abandonment, or later disturbance. Similar-looking preservation cannot make them die together. Bioarchaeology can recover parts of their lives, but not a complete death scene. Healed injuries and signs of physiological stress may reveal hardship experienced long before death. A healed wound proves survival, not murder. Porosity can indicate health stress, but it is not a cause of death certificate and cannot identify an invading army. Brian Hemphill later tested another part of the invasion claim through craniometry. His analysis used 16 adult Mohenjo-daro crania that were sufficiently preserved for the main comparison. 8 cranial measurements move across a comparative chart containing 1,108 adults from 29 South and Central Asian samples. The small Mohenjo-daro group shifts toward Western and Northwestern biological affinities. That result did not identify Aryan invaders. It also did not establish one ethnicity, language, migration, motive, or cause of death for the people represented. Craniometry measures patterns of biological relationship. It cannot tell whether someone was a resident, traveler, later settler, victim, attacker, or member of a named cultural group. The idea that all 37 were later squatters therefore goes too far as well. Later or post-abandonment deposition may explain some contexts, but it has not been demonstrated for every individual. Removing one dramatic answer does not justify replacing it with another. The bones remain a set of unresolved individual histories, not a cast for a single ending. This is also why stories of radiation, nuclear destruction, or ancient aliens have no archaeological standing here. They are modern fabrications built on an earlier massacre claim that already fails its evidentiary test. No credible destruction layer, weapon assemblage, or documented radiation evidence supports those retellings. They do not reopen the mystery. They move attention away from the evidence that actually survives. Once the false massacre is removed, a larger question comes into view. Why did one of the ancient world's great urban centers lose its population and its urban system? The honest answer is not another single catastrophe. Archaeology, instead, suggests a long transformation involving environmental pressure, movement, adaptation, and the reorganization of settlement across different regions. The sequence stretches from mature urban life between about 2500 and 1900 BCE through changing settlement patterns to modern environmental studies and conservation work. It is a transformation measured across millennia, not one fatal afternoon. In the 1960s, Dales and hydrologist Robert Raikes investigated flooding and changes in the river environment. Flood deposits showed that water repeatedly shaped the city's history, but debris could not reveal what killed a particular person. Flooding might disturb buildings, alter occupation, or bury remains without being the direct cause of every death found inside it. River instability, groundwater, and salinity could gradually damage fields, buildings, and infrastructure. Yet none has been proven as the one mechanism that emptied Mohenjo-daro. A 2025 hydrological study widened the frame to the Indus Basin. It identified recurrent severe drought stress coinciding with broader Harappan urbanization and cultural change. Across the ancient Indus landscape, rivers contract and dry fields crack while South Asian families move livestock and supplies away from a declining urban center. The process unfolds in waves, not in one sudden collapse. The study describes fragmentation, migration, adaptation, and changing subsistence and trade patterns across different regions. Drought was likely an important pressure, but not a universal one-line explanation. Research published in 2026 added a social clue. Using geo-referenced legacy plans and residential area, researchers found declining inequality in the sampled sectors over time. The finding is limited and says nothing directly about the skeletons, but it warns against treating the city's final centuries as a simple slide toward militarized destruction. Mohenjo-daro may have faced unstable rivers, flooding, salinity, drought, agricultural change, health pressure, migration, and failing or reorganized urban systems. Their effects likely varied through time. The city did not need a final army to decline. Urban life can unravel when water, food, trade, population, and institutions shift faster than a city can adapt. That explanation is less cinematic than a massacre, but it better matches a civilization transformed unevenly across a vast region. The unanswered mystery is not who conquered one street, it is how an urban world changed. Today, Mohenjo-daro remains only partly excavated. UNESCO records a 240-hectare World Heritage property with roughly one-third excavated since work began in 1922. The exposed ruins now face salt action, a high water table, rain, thermal stress, flood risk, and drainage problems. Excavations solved some questions while making the ancient brickwork more vulnerable. The 2022 monsoon caused further damage, followed by stabilization and conservation work documented in UNESCO's 2025 report. The emergency at Mohenjo-daro is now preservation, not a reopened massacre investigation. UNESCO's 2026 decision continues to emphasize salinity, drainage, research, disaster planning, stabilization, and long-term management. None of that official work revives the old invasion narrative. The unexcavated ground may preserve evidence that changes parts of the story, but future discoveries must still be dated, documented, and tested before they can connect separate bodies to one event. The best next questions are technical. Can surviving collections be matched to original field notes? Can AMS dating place each individual within a secure archaeological phase? Isotopic analysis might reveal patterns of diet and movement. New osteological work could distinguish injuries around death from fractures caused by soil pressure, salt, erosion, or later handling. Better flood, drought, river, and groundwater models could tie environmental change to individual settlement phases. None would guarantee one final answer, but each could replace speculation with narrower evidence. That narrowness is the lesson of the 37 remains. Archaeology becomes most reliable when it admits what a bone, wall, or layer cannot tell us. The evidence does not show 37 people dying together in a final battle. It shows bodies deposited through a complicated period of occupation, abandonment, disturbance, and urban change. The massacre is mythical because the archaeological record cannot carry the story placed upon it. The harder mystery survives. What combination of pressures finally made this extraordinary city impossible to sustain? Thank you for watching the case of Mohenjo-daro's mythical massacre. Subscribe for more evidence-led mysteries and continue with the next case waiting on screen.